explaining the issue. Why are you there? It is so important to clearly communicate why you're at this appointment or having this conversation without minimizing it. There's a little bit of the squeaky wheel gets the grease in this because we know that we're under constraints in our healthcare system. You need to speak up and you need to highlight what you need, what your issue is. Don't make it smaller. So I want you to think about your last medical appointment. Were you actually able to convey how you were feeling during that appointment? So the first step here is the service provider comes into the room and they say, "Hey, how are you doing?" And we have a bit of a cultural response in which we minimize automatically what's going on and we give it a positive spin. "Oh, I'm doing all right, all things considered," or "These are tough times for everyone, of course, and fit as a fiddle." But you're at a medical appointment. So if you're having a healthcare conversation, unless this is your biannual physical, which I don't know how many people get to have those right now in this circumstance. If you're going to an appointment or having a conversation with a healthcare provider, something's going on. You are there for a reason and you are not fit as a fiddle, or you wouldn't be there. So 8 to 15 minutes is that average appointment time. Tell them how you're feeling right away. The professional comes in, says, "How are you doing?" You say, "You know what? I am feeling rubbish. My hip still has a pain in it. I've done the exercises you've told me, the pain's not going away, and it is stopping me from being able to walk and get my mail or to take my grandchildren to the park. It's a real issue." Really lead with what the problem is. When you're explaining your story to a healthcare provider, you're doing two things. The first thing is helping them to understand what it is you need. So you're going into the appointment and you're saying, "Hey, this is what's going on with me, and this is what I need from this appointment." And the other thing you're doing is showing them what you understand. Because by showing them what you understand, by saying, "This is my story, this is what happened before, and this is where I'm at now," you're telling them you understand what they've already told you before so that they don't have to waste time repeating it. And they're also doing a couple of cognitive checks on you to make sure that you're following everything that's going on. So it's really important to explain your problem without minimizing it. We have a quote here from an older adult who works in healthcare. And she says, "Most patients don't know that repeating your story to health service providers actually has a specific purpose. It is to validate that you understand what your diagnoses and treatments are. Also, it is to ensure you haven't forgotten anything." And this is actually taught now in medical schools. So as frustrating as it can be to repeat yourself or to tell your story over and over to each professional, there's a real purpose there and they're going to keep asking. So they've come in, they've asked you how you're doing, and you're going to say, "I'm not doing great. Today I'd like to talk about a new symptom that has come up." Or perhaps you want to talk about your medications, that you've been on a couple of medications for a long time now. Should you still be on these medications? And a great tip on that one is if your doctor is uncertain or if you're uncertain, they can connect with someone called Jerry Med Risk. This is an interdisciplinary team. It is free for healthcare providers to use. And what they do is they look at your medications and your health history and they optimize. They figure out what is the best number of medications for everything going on with you. And this is a geriatric pharmacist, a geriatric psychiatrist, and a geriatrician. So some real experts coming together and figuring out exactly what you need. You might ask, "Can we talk about the next steps for one of the diagnoses that you've received? Or can we talk about a change in my situation? Maybe your environment at home has changed and that's affecting your health. Maybe there are stairs now, and how is that affecting, for instance, that pain in the hip or something to that effect?" So you've explained your situation, but quite often you feel like maybe your key concern is being dismissed. Maybe the healthcare provider has asked some questions and taken you on a different path away from what you need and want from this appointment. Here are some of the top things that healthcare providers have told us you can do to get their alarm bells ringing. So, the first one is to focus on impairments to function. So, what that means is something that is stopping you from living your daily life effectively. So, the problem is so bad that I cannot cook for myself. Maybe it's arthritis in the wrist. I can't pick up the pans now. That's a serious issue because it is stopping you from functioning on a daily basis and definitely from aging in place. Another thing you can talk about is your pain. So rate your pain and give your scale. So I always use the scale of childbirth because that's when a lot of people seem to understand. And I say, where 10 is having a baby, my pain is a 6 right now, but it's a 9 at night. And so I've given the scale, but I've also given a framework in which here's what it feels like right now, and here's what it is at its worst, and when that happens. That's giving some essential information to them. And it's also addressing that problem where if you're anyone like me, by the time you get the appointment, suddenly that pain, that issue is not as bad as it normally feels while I'm talking to the healthcare provider. And I go, but it is really bad. But right now it's not as bad. That's okay. Tell them when it is at its worst. Explain more. And then the other thing you can always do is use gentle persistence because it's okay to state your problem several times if that's what you need to do and bring them back to what you need in your appointment. So, my hip is not improved. Can we please talk about that again? Just bring them back to what you need.